The derives were a class of peoples in ancient and medieval Ireland. The term is Old Irish and derives from the word derives, meaning vassal or subject in its original sense. It designated groups who were vassals or rent payers to a landowner. Later, it became a proper name for certain septs and their own subjects throughout Ireland. The various peoples listed under the heading derives shared the same status in Gaelic Ireland, and had little or no actual kinship, though they were often thought of as genetically related. Derives groups included the derives Muman, derives Temro, derives Becc, and the derives Tuskr. During the early Middle Ages, some derives groups and subgroups exerted great political influence in various parts of Ireland, and certain written sources suggest a connection to Britain as well. History and contexts. The early histories of the derives groups are obscure. As a class that evolved from peoples tied by social status rather than kinship, groups had largely independent histories in different parts of Ireland. While some medieval texts attempt to give the derives an aristocratic origin, these are later fabrications dating to the period after the derives had gained political power. Despite the tributary origins, representatives of at least one derives population would eventually achieve spectacular success, founding a powerful medieval dynasty which is still in existence. Derives Muman. The derives Muman were a prominent enough power to form their own regional kingdom in Munster from a fairly early date. In a recent title, Paul McCotter states, the regional kingdom of derives Muman must have existed in roughly its present location from a very early period. Oghams dating perhaps from the 5th century record unique first names associated with its kings. Quote, according to Francis John Byrne, there are certain inscriptional hints that both the Ireland.The and the Waterford derives vassals may have been of fairly recent Gaulish origins. The ancestors of the Ireland.The are known as the Déisi, and they are also believed to have been active in Roman Britain. One piece of evidence being the name of the capital, Cashel, thought to be inspired by the Roman castella they observed on raids. The derives Muman enjoyed a position in the later Ireland.The over kingdom, suggesting of a special relationship. Byrne mentions it was noticed by Owen McNeill that a number of the early names in the Ireland.The pedigrees are found in Oghams in the derives country of Waterford, among them near Sagamain, after the Gaulish war god Sagamo. According to McNeill, the Waterford derives and the Ireland.The at Cashel cannot well be disconnected. The Uiliathane dynasty were western neighbours of the proto-derives Muman along the southern Irish coast and raided and colonised parts western Britain. They are the best characterised of the South Irish colonists because of clear references to them by name in both early Irish and early British sources, while a presence of the derives Muman cannot actually be confirmed. Also noted of the Lagan, particularly in North Wales, possible presence in Britain. The derives Muman of the subjects of one of the most famous medieval Irish epic tales, the expulsion of the derives. This literary work, first written sometime in the 8th century, is a pseudo-historical foundation legend for the medieval kingdom of derives Muman, which seeks to hide the historical reality that the kingdom's origins lay among the indigenous tributary peoples of Munster. To this end it attributes to the derives an entirely fictive royal ancestry at Tara. The term déisi is used anachronistically in the expulsion of the déisi, since its chronologically confused narrative concerns events that long predate the historical development of déisi communities into distinct tribal polities of the creation of the kingdom of déisi Mumin. The epic tells the story of a sept called the Dalfiacharksui, who are expelled from Tara by the kinsmen Cormac Maget, and forced to wander homeless. After a southward migration and many battles, part of the sept eventually settles in Munster. At some point during this migration from Tara to Munster, one branch of the sept, led by Eochaid or Muirmac Corb, sails across the sea to Britain, where, it is said, his descendants later ruled and deemed the former territory of the Déisi. The expulsion of the déisi is the only direct source for this event. The historicity of this particular passage of the epic apparently receives partial confirmation from a pedigree preserved in the late 10th century, Harleian genealogies, in which the contemporary kings of Dyfed claim descent from Tryphon, a great-grandson of Eochaid or Muir, although the Harleian genealogy itself presents an entirely different version of Tryphon's own ancestry, in which he descends from a Roman imperial line traced back to St. Helena, whose alleged British origin the genealogist stresses. This manifest fiction apparently reflects a later attempt to fabricate a more illustrious and/or indigenous lineage for the Dyfed dynasty, especially as other Welsh genealogical material partially confirms the Irish descent of Tryphon. If the relocation of some of the déisi to Dyfed is indeed historical, it is unclear whether it entailed a large-scale tribal migration or merely a dynastic transfer, or both as part of a multi-phase population movement. However this movement is characterized, scholarship has demonstrated that it cannot have taken place as early as the date implied in the expulsion of the déisi, but must have begun during the second half of the 4th century at the earliest, while commencement in the sub-Roman period in the early 5th century cannot be excluded. It is further entirely possible that the historians and genealogists of the déisi Mumin were guilty of lifting these verified ancestors, who could have originally belonged to another Irish kindred entirely. Genealogical feats of this kind were famously performed by the déisi or Dalgcais. The term déisi is also virtually interchangeable with another Old Irish term, Athech. For the 18th century it had been suggested that this term might be the origin of the Attacoti, who were reported attacking Roman Britain in the 360s, although the argument has been doubted on etymological grounds. This argument has recently been reopened, however, by a proposed equation of déisi Attacoti in a late 4th century context. Finally, MacNeill discusses the movements of the Uí mentioned above at considerable length, arguing their leadership in the South Irish conquests and founding of the later dynasty of Braccain Yog. Figures in the Welsh genealogies matching Uí dynasts in the Irish genealogies. He argues any possible settlement of the déisi would have been subordinate until the ousting of the Uí by the sons of Canada. Déisi Burn later discusses how the rise of the Dalgcais sept of déisi in North Munster at the expense of the Eoganacta was, not unlike the rise of that dynasty at the expense of the Darín several centuries before, and this may in fact have been the inspiration for Dalgcais' claims. An earlier and frequently cited argument by John V. Gallagher is that this was a political scheme of the Unequtil, Ireland's most dominant dynasty, whom he argues created the Kingdom of Thomond in the 10th century to further weaken the position of the already divided Iarganachta. If true, the Unequtil were creating who would soon become the greatest military rivals in nearly the last 4 centuries, threatening Tara as much as Cashel. The Déisi Muman, on the other hand, remained prominent supporters of the Iarganachta throughout their career. The movement of the Déisi to Uskr into the modern County Clare is not documented, but it is commonly associated with the annex of the region to Munster after the decline of Uifiacraghaidni Power in South Connacht. Byrne suggests this dates from the victory of the King of Cashel, Failed Flan Macadio Duib, over the celebrated King of Connacht Gweredna Mac Colmain at the Battle of Carnferedig in 627. A famous early 12th century propaganda text detailing the rise of the Dalgais is the Coggadal Regalab. Recent studies suggest the Dalgais have a genetic signature unique to themselves, referred to as Irish Type 3, belonging to haplogroup R1b. This subclade R1b1b2a1a1b4h is defined by the presence of the marker RL226 S168.